John Bonsall is our next speaker. I mentioned Jim and John, Jim Porter, John Bonsall. They were both here in the late 70s working around the grounds and doing things. And this gentleman, who I refer to as my father who art in Virginia, um, some of you know that story, but I won't get into it other than to say that he has been a great, I would call it a support structure for me, encouraging, always reminding me to hold the thought and build the body. You got to hold that thought long enough to be able to hold that conception in order to build it and make it real, to make it exist. So John is a devoted lifetime student of the University of Science and Philosophy. He's a member of the First Age of Character Club from Newark, Delaware. John lived at the Palace in the years of 1976 and 77. He is a graduate of the University of Frostburg, Western Maryland. He's certified in the theory of biological ionization. He currently resides in the heart of the Shenandoah Valley. He is currently employed by Bluegreen Corp, a national vacation club providing dream vacations. He has numerous awards, in fact, more than I can count on fingers and toes. The guy's a pretty amazing salesman. Numerous number one titles with Blue Green regionally and nationally. It's my privilege to introduce John Bonsall.
Well, Richard, you were an inspiration for me, that's for sure. Richard's going to make my job a lot easier today. And all I'm going to do is just pull specifics out. Richard did. He gave a great broad, statement of what this message is all about. And in my 41 years that I've been involved with the message, I've never had an opportunity to speak about it, my personal experience with Leo and the university. So Matt, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to just start out with telling you how I came to know the Russells, the message, and so on. So you heard Matt reference my cousin Jim, who I'm eternally grateful to. He introduced me to the Russells. I'll never forget, I'm working my way through college, and I was lifeguarding. And Jim would come by, visit me towards the evenings, and we'd chit-chat, and then all of a sudden he would just say, "Well, John, I got to go." And I'm like, "Well, where are you going?" He says, "Well, I'm going to class." And I'm like, I didn't know Jim was going to class anywhere. So this would happen a couple weeks in a row, and then I kind of stopped him. He had this book in his hand. I said, "Well, Jim, what is that?" So I kind of grabbed it from him. Sure enough, there was Unit 1 of the home study course. So I kind of browsed through it. Didn't take long, maybe 6 pages. And I know everyone here has had that experience. I don't know which book, I don't know which whatever, but it hit you and you go, wow, that's it. And so in speaking with all of you here in the last couple of days, I know every one of you have had that moment, that awe moment, so to speak, to where you know, man, this is it. Confirms all those things you had deep inside. So anyway, Jim invited me to one of the classes, the Age of Character Clubs, and that was one of Leo's dreams, that everywhere around the planet, Age of Character Club. So Matt, I don't know who in the university is responsible for that, but each one of you, if you can, work towards that, build character. Richard, you mentioned about character. Matt, you spoke on character. That's it. That's the building block, right? So anyway, Jim invites me to class. I'm sitting there, and it's just like, wow, this is awesome. So anyway, I knew I had to meet the person that was writing this material. So I graduated in December. And Jim came out to see me in Western Maryland. He said, "Come on, John, we're going to go down to the Palace." I'm like, yeah. So we drove, I think, 6 hours or so, right? We get there, the door's locked. We're back in. Angela answers the door. "Sorry, we're closed." So we plead our case, and so she let us come in. And then I don't know how many of you have been to the Palace, but when you first walked in, to the right was the dining room, and all the doctor's scientific drawings were up there, and you just kind of stare and you go, wow. And out of nowhere, Richard, you mentioned those beacons of light coming from, that was the first thing we saw. She just showed up. She looked at us, walked up to us, had her hands out like this. She just grabs us, She already knew, just like everybody else. She knew. Don, she knew your story. Where are you? She knew his story before he showed up, right? And that's how it was. So anyway, we had requested to volunteer, do some work. She accepted, and so on. So anyway, my speech today is the practical application of spirituality. So practical, how I interpret that is just plain, simple, common sense. Right? You can read it all, right? But how do you apply it? Where does it fit into what we do day to day? So anyway, so one of the tough things was, I'll never forget my first day. So Leo said, Johnny, here's a pair of doctor's slippers. I want you to have these. I'm 21 years old, right? I don't know what. Thank you, Leo. I'm staying down in the basement. That was the workers' quarters, if you will. So, you know, you're 21, you don't know anything, right? So I come upstairs in my pajamas and these slippers, and I'm just kind of hanging out, and the doorbell rings to the palace. So I just walk up, and, hey, how you doing? Come on in, right? And so I didn't know anything, and all of a sudden I hear, Johnny, would you come here? So I walk through the baronial hall, up the white steps, and there's Leo leaning over the balcony. And so that was my first butt chewing, if you will. And if you've never been chewed out by an Illuminate, you need to experience it just one time. You'll never forget it. And now Jim's going to speak on balance later on, but that's what Leo would do. But in the same token, she'd chew you out, let you know where you stood, where you can't, and then before you knew it, man, she would reach out. She'd either give you a hug or say something lovingly to balance it out, and you just move forward. So anyway, so I got to tell this story about my cousin Jim. Now here we are, Jim's a couple years older than me. So you're young, got the hormones going, 6 months, right? So a couple stewardess come to the front door of the palace, and Jim and I are like, wow, man, check this out, right? So, so anyway, we got to know the gals and share stories with it. So Leo knew that, you know, it'd been a while. Said, boys, why don't we have a dinner for the gals? And we're like, yeah, this would be great. And so, you know, so they came after we shut the palace down, and she had one of the tables set up in the baronial hall. So we're sitting there dining. What a treat, you know, to be there with Leo and eat and so on. So anyway, now Jim, he had just read a book on telekinesis, and he just thought that was wonderful, right? So he's trying to make a good first impression on these gals, and so he says, Leo, and he was saying how he'd been reading about telekinesis, and he said, how do you feel about telekinesis? And she said, well, Jim, you know, that's something that you can do. So he asked her, he said, well, look, if I wanted to move this spoon from this side of the table over to here, he said, is that possible? And she goes, well, yeah, Jim. She says, no, at your current level of development, it would take about 72 hours. And Jim, the look on his face, he was devastated because he had thought he had discovered something like brand new and he was going to do something great. So Leah looks at him and said, well, Jim, what's wrong with just reaching out and picking the spoon up and putting it over here? So I'm just saying, that's the practicality of spirituality. So anyway, guys, Walter Russell, Leo Russell, for me, my personal journey was this. I kind of aspired for the epitome of what was out there in the world. You know, I'm a great Mozart fan, and, you know, I follow the classics, and you do the research and all of that, but when you take Walter and Leo Russell, so this is how I kind of went through life. They were my sounding board. You know, we all study certain things, and we discover, you know, different materials and writers and all of that, but it had to be compared to the Russellian philosophy. If it didn't fit in, it's out the door. I don't have time to waste my time for that kind of stuff. So, you know, you go out here and you research, you try to discover all different things, and then you realize, wow, it's right there in front of me. The whole thing, black and white kind of thing. So, but anyway, Dr. Russell, his secrets, one of his secrets was his 2-hour project. So Richard was talking about desire, thought, right? So if you had a project, so Doc, he would concentrate on that project for 2 hours. Stop, then he moved to something else. Stop that, move to something else. So he was able to take that enthusiasm, that light, right? You're not subject to boredom, oh, geez, what am I going to do next type of thing. And that's how you achieve stuff. You knowingly got to go about things. And so one of the things Leo taught us was the greatest challenge for any of us is to discover your divinity and then live it. That's the challenge, kind of thing. And it's tough, Have you ever said to yourself that I am God? Tough statement, isn't it? Yeah. But once you realize that, and then as you go about life, and you can apply those principles, all the science that the Russells have given us, the philosophy, and then you apply it knowingly instead of just haphazardly waiting for something to happen for you, kind of thing. So I know that was Doctor's success, so I want to share another story with you. Now, Jim and I used to take turns at the palace to call on Leo. So we lived down the basement. She had this little bell that she would ring if she needed it. So that morning, it was my turn. So it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I hear this bell. You jump out of your bed like, what in the world? So I throw my pajamas on. I run upstairs to Leo's bedroom, and dawn was just barely breaking. And she had this big cotton robe that she would wear. And she had little bobby pins in her hair everywhere, right? She goes, Johnny, she goes, have a seat on the bed. Now, man, no, I'm not supposed to go over to the screen too far, but this is what I got. Pace back and forth. Johnny, you want to be like Doctor, don't you? Yes, Leo, I do. Then she would share with me all the things Doctor had accomplished. And then she would walk and pace, and she looked at me. She goes, Doctor and I, we only needed 2 hours sleep a night. Now it's about 5:15. She says, Johnny, you're going to have to get up earlier. That's all there is to it. So that made it tough, man. When you're living with a cosmic conscious illuminate whose speed of thought is here, they really don't have time for you, but if you're going to volunteer to spend time with them, then they're going to bring you up to your level. They're going to try to, kind of thing. So that's what pushed me through life. You reflect back and you say, okay, well, how would Doc do it? How would Leo do it? So anyway, with my current position that I have, I work for a company that's a vacation club, where all we're doing is selling people dreams. And Leo's always told me that John, it's an individual journey. As much as we as a collective are trying to get this message out, but when it's all said and done, it's your own personal journey. That's what the most important thing is, kind of thing. So anyway, and the only way that I could figure out how to apply what I knew was in my everyday life. Try to set an example, try to let people follow. So anyway, at my work, it's really all mental. It's not really anything physical to it at all. So I had to say, all right, now, John, these certain techniques. So I know people are going to talk about prayer and meditation, but all right, what does it mean, So those are two halves of the spectrum. So what I developed were techniques to apply that in my professional life. So, and without 0 point, Matt, can you bring up all right. Now, guys, you look at this chart, right? And you go, okay, well, what's that? Okay. That's the cosmic pendulum. All right. The most important thing about this pendulum is that 0 right there. Because until you find 0, you're wasting your time. You're just fluttering around. But once you reach 0, then it all begins. So what I had to teach myself was, and my particular technique was this. Before you fall off to sleep, okay, you just got to find that 0 point, all right? And once you find that 0 point, now you got your Creator's attention, all right? So whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, whatever it is that you want to do, right, that's your chance. So ask and you shall receive, right? You don't really need to ask God for anything because he's already given you everything. But if that's what you need, right? So that's what I learned to do was at night, you find the zero. Then you ask your creator for what it was you wanted to achieve, whether it was the next day, next week, next month, next year, right? So you send that out there. Then in the morning with my meditation, so then now you got to give it back, right? Thought, action. So without action, you don't have anything. So that's where then I would put the mechanics of that into motion of how I was going to achieve that which I asked for. So anyway, so I had an opportunity to see how far I could push this. So in my line of work, I talked to 3 different couples every day. And so it was like 8 days in a row, I was able to convince people to grow, their vacation package with us. And I'm like, wow, this thing's working out pretty good. I wonder how far I could take this, right? So anyway, I was able to hold that process, and it just took so much mental effort. I mean, it was really, really draining. But I was able to do it for 43 consecutive days to get people, because I'm in sales, and to get, to ask somebody to spend $30,000 in 20 minutes is a big task, okay? You need to try it one time. I don't know who I was sharing with this morning in my, Richard, I think we were talking, right? There's nobody in my department that was there last year. It's just mentally grueling. So that's my salvation is this message, this science kind of thing. And so whatever brings you the greatest joy in your life, right? You got to hold it. So that's the next thing I'm going to transition to is the science behind the thought, right? So I jumped out on the internet and I was trying to come up with the statistics on thinking and thought. And it was all over the place. Some people said, oh, we have 15,000 thoughts a day. Somebody pushed it out to 80,000 thoughts a day. And I'm thinking, geez, that's a lot of thoughts, isn't it? Richard, you touched on this early with, it's that filtering process. So early on, I developed 4 categories into which I put my life in. Beauty, balance, love, and if it wasn't of character, just filtered it out. Boom, gone. Had no application, no purpose in my life kind of thing. So that's where it comes from. You have to find out what's important to you. You lock on it. Filter out all the other BS because it doesn't mean anything, right? And you have to catch yourself. And I've done that many a times, lying in bed, all these thoughts are coming. You're like, you got to stop this, So just lock on to what you feel is important, right? Then, whatever your line of work is, whatever your profession is, whatever your life is, then you just apply it, kind of thing. So of those thoughts, right, you're like, okay, now how many of those can I go out, hold, grab, lock on? Because you have to give a thought body. So if you got 80,000 fleeting thoughts a day, how many of them did you grab to apply to what you're trying to achieve that day? Right? So I'm just saying we go through life every day. We go through the motions. We get up, go to work, get dressed, whatever, and all that stuff. So, but whatever is important to you, again, whatever brings you that greatest joy, there is a method, there is a technique that you can achieve it, you can hold it, and just take it as far as you want to take it. But anyway, the cosmic pendulum, okay? As you guys will see, there's 4.5 swings one way, there's 4.5 swings the other way. So as you look at it, you're like, all right, John, what do you mean? So when you find that 0 point, okay, 4.5 swings of the cosmic pendulum is the invisible, the undivided. It's where your creator is, okay? So once you find that, once you send that thought, hold that thought, then you ask your creator, now guess what? His job's done. His part is guaranteed, right? The other 4.5 swings of the cosmic pendulum, now that's on you. right? So you don't need to point fingers. You don't need to blame anybody else, right? So that's what you have to do. You got to do your part. There ain't no freebies in the world. There ain't no handouts kind of thing. So I'm just saying, be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you think, because guess what? You're going to get it. It's going to be there. Share a personal story with you. I collect French porcelain. It's the most beautiful stuff in the world. And it's just great artisans that put art on porcelain. So as I'm developing my own personal techniques of thought and putting it into practical application, and I have certain color themes in my collection. So I'm thinking, wow, man, it'd be nice to have this green, purple, gold plate to match this, right? So you go about your day. A day or two later, I'm going into an antique store. I'm floating around. You turn. There it is. So I manifested it 2 days ago. But that's where we have to be patient. You have to let the universe fulfill its timeline to put it there in front of you. So, but you got to try it. If you don't do it, you got to do it knowingly. So lock in, just experiment a little bit, and then once you discover, you go, man, this does work, kind of thing. And so then you can go, because Leo had a great quote. You can either live a purposeful life, or you can live a purposeless life. You just go through the motions. You don't even have a clue why you're here, what you're doing, whatever. So that's the beauty of the message. If you need an outline, you need a blueprint of how to get through this, right? It's right there, Russell. So I am so thankful to have all of you here. I can't tell you the feeling that it gives me to be able to talk about the Russells and have the message be presented and talked about in its purest form, kind of thing. So another practical application, I want to reference Mary Baker Eddy, Christian Science. So they say, whoever the experts are, that she was the second greatest healer next to Jesus. And I remember Leo always talking about Mary Baker Eddy. And I won't say that she intimidated her, but there was just something about Mary Baker Eddy that Leo was like, because you know, both Doctor and Leo were commanded not to heal. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. But I think because of Mary Baker Eddy's prowess and so on, that, you know, Leo was like, well, geez, why can't I do that, you know? It's not that she couldn't do it, but she was asked not to do that, because think what would happen, right? How many times, Richard, have you heard the word cult thrown around about the Russells? Some cult, really, kind of thing. But anyway, here's a great story I read about Mary Baker Eddy. So she would train people to heal, right? So anyway, and then after you healed, and then you're sent out. Now go do it. So anyway, the story goes where this gentleman, he's going out and he's trying to heal, trying to apply what he knows and so on. It just ain't happening. Nothing's working. So he comes back to Mary Baker Eddy's home. And she sits down. He says, look, I just can't do it. I don't know how to do this anymore. So she picks up a pencil out off of her desk. She holds it in front of me. And she said, now, is this pencil real or is it unreal? He says, it's unreal. She says, now go heal. So the reason he couldn't heal, because he was thinking that the body is real, right? So if you know that it's an illusion, right? So again, practicality, spirituality. That's applying these scientific, these spiritual principles that we're all studying and wanting to know and do it in your everyday life. So now, bear with me here just one moment. Practicality of spirituality. Jim and I used to ask Leo all the time about, you know, illumination, right? And we used to think, wow, man, it would be great to have an illumination. And she would always say, boys, no, you don't. You know, I know a lot of you guys know the story of Doctor when he came back from the 39-day and night illumination, right? The guy could barely get back in his body. He just couldn't assimilate. Right, so the divine Iliad. Have you guys ever seen the examples of his writing when he tried? It was all messed up and so on and so forth. But anyway, she shared with us that every word of the home study course, every word of their books is a mini illumination. She said, just take your time, pace yourself. It's all right there, kind of thing. Now, would it be great to have the big flash? Yeah, I guess it would, right? Richard, I know you had your little share. And the stories, you know, and Richard, if you don't mind me just referencing something about you, I had a chance to, Richard staying with me, and he's sharing his stories with me. And I didn't know this, but I guess Doc was 90, somewhere in there when he was working on the George Washington bust. And so the clay was left unfinished. And so I know Leo loved and respected this guy big time. So she asked Richard, because Doctor left the right side of this bust unfinished. And she said, Richard, you want to give this a shot and finish this thing out? I mean, I'm just thinking about that, you know, of him being able to go in. Leo trust him to finish out, you know, this magnificent sculptor, right? And what hurt me was, and Leo was impressed like crazy about it, and then they had to bring the people in to cast it. And Richard said, the guy comes in, he looks at it, he goes, oh, he said, this is too perfect. And he kind of mussed it up a little bit. He goes, oh, here, now we can work with it. So anyway, let me just see what other notes I got here for you guys. All right. Bear with me just 1 second here. Don't want to leave any good stuff. So anyway, guys, I'm not going to get long-winded on you. I just wanted to keep my presentation as simple as possible. And I just wanted to pull one little aspect of what Richard touched on. And so just try to apply it to your everyday lives. Give it a shot. Say, okay, I wonder what this nut guy's talking about. So, but it's right there. You know, you see the science, you look at the pages and you browse over them. You really don't get a chance sometimes to connect the dots. But that's what it is. It's right there. So a lot of people don't need science to confirm, you know, what we're doing here. I know you guys know lots of people in the world that live the message and never heard of the Russells, right? But there are just some people in the world that need that scientific foundation. And so that was the intent of the Russells coming together. So man had evolved enough now to where science and religion could be married. So, and remember what Doc was commanded in his Illumination, right? So God commands, you will be my next messenger to mankind. Now, if man needs science to know me, I'll make you a master scientist. In art, whatever it was. And so I will make you that. And what I can, one of the things that resonates with me is, now, what I have given thee is but a thimble from the oceans of knowledge. So I'm thinking, geez, Illumination every 7 years of his life, had the big one at 49, right? 39 days and nights. You see what Doctor accomplished in his life, and you go, a thimble? But so just think what we got to look forward to, guys. So if what they accomplished as a couple together was a thimble full of knowledge, you know. So anyway, guys, I'm just going to wrap up by saying again, whatever brings you the greatest joy in your life, focus on it, apply the principles that have been given to you. So if somebody wants to test you, somebody wants to challenge you, there is nothing that man has that can stand up to these principles, kind of thing. So get in there and just kind of find your own little thing. So I'm going to just kind of shut this down. If you have any questions or comments for me, great. Otherwise, I'm going to drift on out of here. Mr. Terry.
I have a comment, actually.
All right, sir.
In regards to the process you iterated on as far as asking and receiving.
Yes, sir.
Well, two things, actually. I know Leo said God will work with you, not for you.
Absolutely.
You have to do your part. And would it be also true in part of that asking process, and of course you doing your work, but as the triune, you have to believe that you already have it also?
Without a doubt.
during, not only asking it, but believing you already have it as part of that completion of that cycle.
Yes, because a lot of people, they don't believe they have it. They don't know that that's, you know, that's a tough statement. Think about it. Ma'am, I could look in your face when I said, did you know you're God? You're like, me? Yeah. Everybody is, right? And that's a tough one. That's a tough one to accept. To say, all right, that's my gift. I'm an extension of the source. So what you are, because you already know everything. The knowledge that we're sharing today, all the stuff that's going to be talked about today, nothing is new knowledge. We're just rediscovering it again. You already know everything, kind of thing. But yes, Terry, that's it. So again, you can either approach it knowingly or unknowingly, and sometimes you fall onto something. People say, oh, look at that guy, man, he's lucky. Well, maybe he was lucky, but if he was successful or achieving whatever he does, it wasn't luck. There was a process to that end result. All right. So, but if I could just add this, guys, of the fleeting thoughts, okay, you gotta teach yourself to hold on what you're trying to achieve. So whatever it is in your life, hold it. Right. I know I got a couple musicians right here. Right, you know, and you had to kind of practice a little bit to get to the level you are, and you just kept going, kept holding it, and momentum. If I may, guys, momentum. Who would like to tell me what momentum is, scientifically? All right, right here.
The tendency of a body to keep moving without any external force.
Okay, we'll go with that. So without bringing up a bunch of charts to show you guys the cube wave field boundaries, but how nature works with you, all right? So you grab the thought, you hold it, now it has a thought body, now it's real, right? And then you hold the thought. Now you got some momentum building, right? And everyone now comes a little easier, a little easier. So who here has ever run out of gas in their automobiles? And you look up there and 100 yards up the road, you see that gas station, right? And you're like, I think we can push the car up there, right? So where's the most difficult part when you go to push the car? Thank you. See, everybody knows that. Then you get it going, right? And before you know it, the car's pushing itself. But, so in the thought wave universe, as soon as you let that thought go, boom. Then those cube wave field boundaries, they break down. Then you just start backing up, right? And now you got to start all over again. So hold it as long as you can. Take advantage of momentum. And that's what I was able to do at work. But what puzzles me in my work, nobody ever asks me how I do it. And I do know this, unless somebody goes like this, guys, unless they reach that hand up and they're asking, and they are in, Richard, I think you use this word, receivership, you're wasting your time. Well, anyway, guys, thank you very much for your question. It was an honor to speak in front of all of you. Thank you very much.